Hello everyone, this is Mahesh from ENH iSecure. In this blog, we will discuss about the NELM integration with SailPoint Identity Now. Coming to the next slide, the main agenda of this video is to integrate the non-employee module with SailPoint in order to manage their lifecycle status during their tenure in the organization. And coming to the next slide, introduction to NELM. We can use Identity Now to track these users' access and activity by creating and maintaining a non-employee source in their tenant. It will help in adding, removing, and managing the access for every non-employee engaged with any organization. The NELM module of SailPoint Identity Now has a distinct future, which we can enable role-based access control, vendor management. It can also help you centralizing the vendor access and adding the vendor in a bulk upload via CSV file. And coming to the next slide, these are the prerequisites for NELM integration. All target applications which we want to manage with SailPoint must contain the vendor data. The vendor data must have a unique value for mapping with target applications. For example, employee code, employee number, email ID, etc. The idea is that at least one attribute must be unique for every vendor present in order to distinct them and correlate them with the target applications. And coming to the next slide, to integrate the NELM, these are the steps to proceed with. We will initiate with the basic configuration. Here we need to add the source name and other details. Proceeding with setting up the account schema, connections, accounts, and finally configuring the identity profile. We have explained on each of them steps in the coming up slides in detail. And coming to the next slide, coming to the configurations, we have to add source name according to the requirement and add description as well. Source owner, who is the admin for this non-employee source, add that user details. Governance management for source management. We have to create governance group. We have to add who all are required subadmin access for managing this non-employee lifecycle management and add their data, and if they log into the SailPoint tenant in the connection sources, they are able to see only non-employee source. Who are managing these accounts? 10 members can manage this non-employee lifecycle management. Reviewers. In the reviewers tab, we can add 3 level of reviewers. Account schema. There are 10 system defined attributes and 8 static attributes. The attributes mentioned in the slide are 8 static attributes present in the NELM source. And coming to the next slide, mandatory attributes in NELM. Below are the list of mandatory attributes in NELM. These attributes will be static and cannot be edited and can't add the hint as well. Account name, first name, last name, phone number, email, manager, start date and end date. Coming to the next slide, identity profile. Identity Now prioritizes identity profile based on the order they were created. The earlier an identity profile is created, the highest priority it is. If an identity has an exclusively on more than one authoritative source, the highest profile will be used to calculate their identity attributes values. For example, an employee ID comes from Active Directory, but phone number and address might come from HR system and other email might come from other target applications. However, for NELM, the contractor information will come exclusively from Active Directory. To create an identity profile in the admin interface, go to Identities, Identity Profile, select New enter a name for your identity profile. As a best practice, the name should describe the source for the identity profile. Choose an account source and click OK. The account source you chosen here will become an authoritative source, and the users on this source will be granted identities in Identity Now. Enter a description for your new identity profile. We can provide invitation option. You can choose to invite users manually or automatically. If you have the provisioning service enabled for your organization, you can configure the identity profile to automate invite users to join Identity Now. When the enter a specific sign-in method, username and password, user in this identity profile sign in into Identity Now with username and password created during their Identity Now registration process. Direct connection. Users loaded from identity profile sign in into using the password associated with source selected from authentication source drop-down list. This type of authentication is associated to referred as pass-through authentication. Identity Now, we can map an identity attributes from the account attributes on any source. The identity attributes username, work email, last name must be set with a mapping for identity profile. Username must be unique. Work email cannot be blank, but it is validate as an email address. If you have provisioning and you want to use lifecycle state to perform provisioning task, the lifecycle state attribute must be mapped. Coming to the next slide, use cases. For non-employee lifecycle management, we have two use cases. One is joiner, second one is leaver. Joiner. Based on the start date, the user will comes to active lifecycle state. For the leaver scenario, based on the LWD, the leaver scenario will trigger and accounts will be disabled. Coming to the next slide, NELM Functional Workflow. NELM source is created in SailPoint Identity Now tenant. Here we can onboard users via bulk upload or single user onboarding. And coming to the lifecycle management, we can automate access provisioning, automated access termination. And coming to the reminders, contractor expiration reminders and extension of contractor. And coming to the repository, create visibility on access, enable contractor access auditability, decrease number of orphan accounts. And coming to the next slide, adding accounts. To manage non-employee identities in Identity Now, you will need to create accounts for them. You can add accounts individually or in bulk. Each non-employee source can have a maximum of 20,000 accounts. The 8 attributes mentioned on the screen are the default static attributes present in NELM. Enter the following information. Unique identifier. Enter a unique identifier that will serve as the identity's username. The non-employee will use this to sign in. First name. Add the non-employee's first name. Last name. Add the non-employee's last name. Phone. Enter a phone number for non-employee including the country code. Email. Enter a email address for the account. Manager. Choose a manager from the drop-down list or start typing to see the name that matches the character you have added. Start date. Select the anticipated start date for the non-employee. End date. Select a anticipated end date for the non-employee. And after filling all the data, click on submit. The identity will be created on the tenant. And coming to the next slide, bulk upload. Bulk upload can be done by subadmin or admin. Before uploading a list of non-employee accounts, you will need to export the CSV template using the export button on the accounts page. Upload account file must follow the standard template. The standard template will contain all 8 static attributes and the list of custom attributes like office address, phone number, etc. You can have a total 18 attributes including 8 static attributes. Before uploading, you need to take care start date and end date should be in ISO 8601 format. You need to add country code for phone number. After adding data in a proper format, click on Accounts, select Bulk Upload and choose the CSV file containing all the details of the contractor. When you will initiate the upload, you will see a success notification on your screen once the file is uploaded. And coming to the next slide, in accounts, we can check how many accounts are there in non-employee lifecycle management. This tab will allow the admin and subadmin to check the number of accounts present in NELM. It is basically the same tab where we added the accounts. We can export all the accounts present in NELM. And coming to the next slide, for lever scenario, it will be triggered based on the end date attribute of the user. Important note, when we are uploading the data from CSV file, we need to ensure and validate the end date time zones to avoid any issues during the lever process. Important note to take care is that we need to check the time zones as well for the user in order to avoid deactivation of accounts. Based on the time zone, we need to add the life cycle state transform to avoid any issues for the lever scenario. Upcoming slides, let's discuss about the time zone. Coming to the next slide, time zone when onboarding user. While adding start date and end date from onboarding form, we can't see the time zone. The admin who is onboarding the user need to be aware of this. When we are uploading a user from bulk upload, we can mention the time zone. However, if an organization has partner contractors in different time zone, it is important to make a note of time zone mentioned, else it can cause issues for joiner lever process. For example, a partner working in the USA time zone and the time zone mentioned in the IDN is IST. This can lead to disablement of the user ID on the start of his LWD rather than EOD. To avoid such issues, we need to take care of the time zone. These are the screenshots for start date and end date from UI and CSV file. In the next slide, we will now be focusing on APIs available from SailPoint, and we will try to understand the process operations use of each API. And coming to the next slide, NELM integration by using APIs. APIs are used to integrate new applications with existing software system. This increases development speed because each functionality does not have to be written from scratch. We can use APIs to leverage existing code. In NELM module in SailPoint, we can use these APIs to implement non-employee lifecycle management functionality. With this functionality in place, administrators can create non-employee record and update and configure them using their organization. This allows organization to provide secure access to non-employee and control that access. And coming to the create non-employee record, this request will create a non-employee record. This will create a new account for a contractor, vendor or partner. Update non-employee record. This request will update a non-employee record like end date or any other attributes if required. Get a non-employee record. This gets a non-employee record. This will help in fetching any particular account data for a non-employee. List non-employee records. This gets a list of non-employee records. This API will fetch all the accounts present in the non-employee source. In the next slide, we are focusing on possible ways to generate unique identifier automatically. And coming to the next slide, possible solutions to automate unique identifier generation. We will create the unique identifier from ServiceNow and we will fetch the data from ServiceNow to Identity Now tenant, where we can add username generator transform to generate unique ID. Account creation of AD account will be added the unique ID to attribute SailPoint Identity Now username UID during identity profile mapping. We will place the CSV in a shared folder, and by using PowerShell script we will add the unique identifier. We can fetch the details by using API call. And in the next slide, let's discuss regarding the notifications. Non-employee management to trigger email notifications in Identity Now. Non-employee account request. When a manager requests a new account for a non-employee, they will receive email to confirm that their request was submitted. Non-employee account request decision. The reviewer will review the details and made a decision about a non-employee account. The account manager receives this email to confirm that their account request was either approved or denied. Non-employee account review. Once non-employee account request is submitted, this email is triggered and sent to reviewers to notify them that a request needs their attention. Non-employee end date reminder. This email is sent to the account manager for a non-employee source when the non-employees on the non-employee source has a end date is 7 days. In 7 days. The next slide, let's discuss regarding the limitations of NELM module. Coming to the next slide, limitations of NELM module. Number of NELM sources are restricted to 50 and the number of accounts for each source can be 20,000. For additional accounts, we need them in another source. The mandatory attributes list is static. We cannot edit that. Also, we can configure a total of only 18 attributes for the NELM source. In the onboarding form, we need to add the values for every text field as the drop-down list is not available. For requesting NELM accounts, the manager does not have the option to bulk upload. If any accounts are added by bulk, it will not go through any reviewer process. Thank you. Please follow these social media pages for any updates.